All right, cool. So we are with Dillon out of Richmond, Virginia. This guy right here likes to flip houses, make money. So yeah, Dillon, can you just tell everyone to provide some context, like who you are and what you do?
My name is Dillon Dole. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and basically what I do is I buy houses, fix them up, and once I fix them up, I rent them out. And once I rent them out, after I rent them out, then I refinance them, and then repeat that strategy. And it's known as the Burr strategy. It's big around bigger pockets. David Green, the host of Bigger Pockets, kind of wrote the book on it. It's called the Burr book, Brrrr, and that's how I've acquired. So I have 23 rentals right now, and that's how I've acquired mostly all of them is through that process because I'm able to pull all my cash back out.
Now, before even going into real estate, what were you doing before? Were you always entrepreneurial? Did you have other businesses? How was
Oh
that?
yeah, so I graduated. I went to VCU in Virginia here and graduated in 2017. And then I was working construction for throughout college, and then after I graduated, I worked construction still for like another year till I saved up enough. But I learned a lot in construction because I was listening to podcasts all the time while I was fixing up the houses and stuff like that. So when I finally saved enough money to actually jump in the real estate game, I had all the knowledge from all the podcasts, mainly Bigger Pockets podcast, but I just jumped in the game from there and bought my first property in Petersburg for only 20,000 with savings. And then from there, I just kept on doing the Burr strategy. But yeah, I would say I was pretty entrepreneurial when I was little. I had a bunch of little businesses like vending machine businesses. And then I was making cornhole boards, selling them on Craigslist. I did that for a whole summer and just a bunch of random stuff like that.
So you're always hustling. And you also had a landscaping company too, right? For about a year?
Yeah, I did for a little bit, but that was too much work. So I stopped that.
You weren't feeling it? You weren't like too happy? Like, what was it exactly that you didn't like?
It was first off, it's a lot harder to get clients than I thought it would be to get lawns. So I had a lawn care company. I made an LLC and everything. It was a lot harder to get clients than I thought. And also it's a lot harder to scale that business because you can hire out the work, but if you're only getting like $25 a lawn to stay competitive and you send someone and pay them 15 or whatever, $20 to do the lawn, or maybe if they're on hourly, you pay them $10 an hour, but it takes them an hour to drive out there. Your margins aren't that big. And so I felt like I was doing a lot of the lawn mowing myself. So it was kind of hard to keep increasing my business and keep scaling out. So that's kind of the reason why I didn't keep going with the lawn services.
Yeah, they do say, I might be wrong actually on this, but they do say, I think, that on service-based businesses, it's kind of hard to kind of scale that, even for like a digital marketing agency, landscaping, it's hard or a lot harder compared to having a business where they sell a certain product, because you can always scale that you can always scale that a lot more than a service-based company because you have to get more labor or more people to work with you.
Right. And that's why online companies are killing it right now because they can scale it. They can do subscriptions and everything like that. And everything's built into whatever platform they're giving to the customer.
Yeah, you can get money almost instantaneously if you just sell a product, whereas a service, it takes time, that's the thing. But so you did the landscape company, you finished that, and then you went into real estate. Now, listening like to podcasts or reading books, maybe even watching YouTube channels of like entrepreneurs going into real estate, there's a big transition of like just listening to those guys and then actually doing the work. Now, what was that trigger, that moment? You're like, okay, I had this money saved up. Let's do this. Let's put this money to work and get into actual investing.
Yeah, pulling the trigger on the first property is the toughest and scariest thing for sure. Because honestly, I didn't know too much about what I was doing when I first pulled the trigger. I mean, I didn't even know what an earnest money deposit was, to be honest, which is the deposit you give to the title company and then they take it off when you actually buy the property.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, once you just get enough knowledge, you just gotta. For me, the way I looked at it was I didn't have that much. It's because I bought my first property for $20,000 in Petersburg, Virginia, and for me, it wasn't that risky in my head because if the property drops, let's say 20%, then I lose, and it's worth 16,000. I mean, I still have a cash flowing property that rents for $600. So that's kind of the main reason why I was able to pull the triggers, because I just ran the numbers and I said, this should work. Now the numbers aren't as good as they look on paper as they are in real life, because there's a lot more like vacancies and stuff like that than you usually account for in those lower income neighborhoods. But that's basically how I pulled the trigger, was just running the numbers and just being knowledgeable.
Yeah. So do you always have a worst case analysis for every investment that you make?
Yeah. So now I kind of do my business a little bit differently now. Now I usually try and, so when I go through a property, I'm always fixing it up now instead of buying it turnkey. So when I go on a property, I marked out and I still learn numerous new things on every new property I buy, but I go through a property, and then once I get that number that I think it's going to be, like the total repairs, I usually add 20% to that, and then add 3,000 to that. And then that's usually about actually how much repairs, because there's so many unaccounted for things that people don't realize when they're fixing up a house. Now, if you're buying turnkey, it's a different story. Or if you're buying like retail, it's a different story. You don't have to really worry about that as much. You still have to worry about the repairs when you actually rent out the property or move into the property, but you don't have to worry about those big repairs that come up, like foundation or roof, or hot water heater, or the worst is the foundation. But that's what I do when I usually go through my houses.
Now, wait, let's just take a step back 1 second. Of course, saving that money takes time and effort. You need a lot of discipline to, save that money and then have a goal in mind. Did you always want to go into real estate? You were like, were you always like, hey, I want to save X amount of money so that I can go and do this for real? Or did you kind of just save money and just waited for an opportunity of some sort to start?
Yeah. So when I first was saving the money, since I was doing construction and seeing them, like I was working for a construction company that was also flipping the houses sometimes, or we're doing punch outs. Okay. But I kind of saw from the ground up how to renovate a house. So that kind of really got me motivated. So then after that, I just, I was getting paid, I think like $15 an hour. And then I was just trying to save all that. I wasn't really going out much, going out to bars or anything like that. So I was able to save up a good amount through college and also after college for the next year. And then, with all the side hustles I was doing throughout college, like the cornhole business and doing side jobs, I was able to eventually save up enough to buy that cheap Petersburg house.
So it did take a while though. You do put an emphasis on, like, for any youngsters listening, it's really important to save money,
Right.
Because you could go out, drink, and like every weekend, but that adds up, right? But if you didn't spend that money, you could have used that for a potential investment that can be really good for you in the long term.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, I was also taking some of that saved money. I was putting a portion towards stocks, probably about like 20%. And then, as you know, the stock market's been growing since like 2011. So I also got some gains off there. And so I sold all the stocks to actually get some more cash to buy this house. Now I'm back in the stock market too as well, because I like spreading out, as much as possible. I don't want to be all in on real estate. So I have some precious metals too. I got some stocks and I got some real estate. Most of my, portfolio is in real estate, but I like playing with it and switching it up sometimes.
No, I think it's always a good idea to diversify your portfolio, right? But when you first started with real estate, was it just you by yourself? Did you have anyone else to work with?
No, so I found my the contractor that was fixing up the house off Craigslist. So now it was just by myself when I bought my first one. That's why it was so scary when I bought it, because my heart dropped like a little bit, and I was like, "Holy crap!" And then after that, I just found someone off Craigslist, some contractor, and I was paying him like, I think it was $12 an hour. And I was working with him, making sure, he wasn't screwing me, calculating his time and everything. We fixed up that Petersburg house for pretty cheap. It didn't take us too long. Rented that one out. And then from there, I just kind of just kept trying to do the rental properties after that, because I realized that you don't need to put as much work into a rental property that you do in a flip, because home buyers are really picky when it comes to buying their house. So you do have, when you're selling a house compared to renting a house, selling a house, it can, you have to make sure everything is good, because they'll tear the house up. They'll pick the house apart when they go and view the house. They'll say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this shouldn't be here. So that's why I kind of focus more on rental properties.
But can you just tell us a quick sec, like what are the potential business models in real estate? So yes, you can have rental income, or you can legit just flip the houses and make a huge chunk of cash. Like what business models are there in terms of real estate investing?
Yeah, there's probably four different ones that you could do through real estate. So one of them is obviously flipping. You buy the house, fix it up, flip it for a profit. One of them is rental properties. You buy the house, rent it out, take that long-term cash flow every month if it's over the mortgage. Another one is a lot of people are unfamiliar with this. It's called wholesaling, which basically means you find a crappy like a crappy property that needs fixing up, broken windows, overgrown lawn, whatever. And you find the owner of that property, and there's various ways to do it. You can skip trace the phone number on like True People Search once you have the address. You could also do it on Lead Sherpa. There's a bunch of different websites you could do it on, but then it gives you that phone number. You could call the owner, and then from there you meet up with the owner, and then you negotiate a price. And once you negotiate that price, let's say you say 50,000. You talk to the owner, he'll sell to you for 50,000. You then go to an investor like me, or blast it out on Craigslist or Facebook or whatever, and blast it out for 60,000. Now, someone buys it for 60,000, you get the difference between that $60,000 and $50,000 price range. So you make $10,000 doing that, and that takes really no money except the marketing if you want to market. So when you see like those we buy houses cash signs on the side of the road, most of those signs and people are wholesalers that do that. And the last way to make money in real estate is obviously lending. If you want to be a hard money lender, which is basically lending people that are doing these flip properties at about 10 to 15% interest with a couple points, is a good way to make money too, and a lot less risky if you don't lend out that much money on the property.
Okay, and you said that your first property was a rental or a flip?
So my first one ever, I was actually a flip with a partner. And then after that, then I got my first rental by myself.
Okay. And what made you decide, like, okay, again, going back to diversifying your portfolio, did you want to have like multiple sort of like sections of, the business models of real estate, or did you kind of want to stick to one thing only, like just flips or just rental properties? Like, what was your strategy behind that?
So I guess thinking about it, So I'm gonna do my first flip probably in the next 2 weeks that I haven't done a flip since like 2017, but the market's so hot right now that I'm probably actually gonna flip this one instead of renting it out. But I don't know, the reason why I usually choose to rent them out is because if I refinance, I get all that money back out anyway. And then after I refinance, it's just a long-term cash flowing asset. Only problem is you do have to deal with the tenants, if there's a leak, the refrigerator breaks, all that, termites and everything. So you got to just expect that. But I'm making like about 100, 200 a month per property over the mortgage on properties that I have, no money into, because I'm able to pull out all the cash with the refinance.
And you're managing over 20 properties right now, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And how do you kind of manage all that? Do you have a team to go in each independent house and be like, hey, like to kind of check out on the situation, the tenants? I feel it's a lot of work for just one person.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I noticed that quick. So once I got 14 rentals, I was so tired of all the tenants calling me, especially for the showings and everything. I didn't want to meet them all out there and just explaining, yeah, you need this credit score, even though it's right there in the description. They just ask questions that are right there in the description. So what I decided to do once I got about 14 properties, I got a little tired of all the tenants calling me. I actually hired, are you familiar with what a VA is? A virtual assistant?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually hired a virtual assistant in India so all the tenants call him. He does all the screening through online. He does all the rent collection online, and he signs all the leases online. And he does all the showings online too. We put an electronic lockbox on the properties now that he sends the tenant or the potential tenant a one-time code, and they type that in. They pull out the key, open it, and then he also gets a picture of their license plate and everything, or not their license, their ID. And so if there is anything wrong with the property or anything stolen, we have their IDs and we have their full name. I mean, we haven't had a problem with that at all yet, so that's good. But yeah, that's how I do it. And he's full time for me, and he also does my accounting work too. I taught him how to do that in his off time. So I mean, I only pay him $5 an hour now. It was $4.50, and now I pay him $5 an hour. But that's actually a pretty good wage over there in India.
Yeah. So in the beginning, you kind of have to do everything yourself, maybe even down to the construction at some point. But as you start to grow, obviously you don't have a lot of time now, so you're going to have to outsource certain things to really focus on what you need to focus on.
Right. And yeah, that's the biggest challenge, is just trying to outsource as much as you can. So what I do is I like to try and, when I'm doing something that I think I know can be outsourced, I try and figure out ways to put it on a spreadsheet or put it on a Google Doc and just make a video of how I'm doing it, so I could easily be outsourced to my virtual assistant or to someone else in the future that I hire. So they just have step-by-step instructions on how to do it.
Yeah, I've definitely used like Upwork and Fiverr. And of course, you can have an idea in your mind, but when you want to put it out to paper, you really need to break everything down, because the freelancer on the other side, they can be confused, and it's your fault because you didn't explain it as well. So you need to be very, very thorough. And especially if you have a business to your magnitude with a lot of cash flow and responsible with people's information, then it's very important to be thorough,
Yeah. And the people outside of the US, you definitely have to make step-by-step instructions for them, because they don't know the U.S. culture as much and stuff like that. They don't know the laws as much. So you definitely got to educate them as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Now, I feel this is important, because if you're working with the VA from halfway across the world and they're managing other people's personal information, how do you kind of reassure that that person is not going to do anything with that information?
So we don't have too much personal information from our tenants, because what we do with the credit check is it's online. So they put their own information in. It's on Buildium. It's the software we use. But they put their own information in, and then their own social security and everything. And then it just shoots us the credit report. So we actually don't collect much personal information besides, their name from the tenants and their ID.
Okay.
So I could see how it can get sticky though if you were to collect their social security and everything like that, but luckily we don't have to.
That's good. So listening like the Bigger Pockets podcast and then putting in your own work, what were your first mistakes that you made? Because obviously I don't think anyone can really, apply the information 100% efficient from the podcast or any resource down to the actual work. What were like your first couple of mistakes that you kind of made during the process?
Yeah, some of the biggest mistakes I made is definitely underestimating what it will cost to repair a property. That's one huge one I made. And then also a huge one I made is also when I'm done with the property, sometimes I think it's going to appraise for a lot more than it actually does. So when I'm done with the property, I get an appraisal on it. And, for this specific property, I thought I was going to appraise for $60,000, and ended up appraising for $40,000. So you just got to know your numbers and know the market really well when you're doing that. And screening right isn't huge. My first couple tenants, they sucked. So I didn't care about credit or anything like that. So they just kind of walked in to the house. I didn't screen them too well. I just, they sounded nice on the phone. So I let them in. They paid for a couple months. It was kind of cool. And then after that, I actually had to pay. I think I paid them to get out because they were like 2 months behind. So I think I gave them like $200. They cleaned out the place and got a new tenant in there, and I learned my lesson.
Is it fair to say that the appraisal process is arguably the most important? And if so, like, how do you kind of determine what it is? You have to renovate the property, and then someone would come in, right, and determine how much the actual property is going to be valued at, right?
Yeah, so the appraisal is definitely probably the most important, especially in the refinance process. The selling process, if you're flipping, the buyer still needs to get an appraiser too as well. But yeah, what the appraiser does is they look at properties that were sold in the last 6 months within a half a mile radius, and they look at the price that that property was sold and the amenities in that property and the amount of bedrooms and square footage and all that stuff, all that good stuff. If it has stainless steel appliances, they're gonna, give you maybe $1,000 boost. If it has granite countertops, they'll give you maybe another $1,000 boost. That has extra bathroom, they might give you $5,000 to $10,000 boost. So they take everything into account and put it on like an itemized appraisal sheet, and they subtract and add different things based on what your house amenities are versus what their house amenities are. So what I kind of got screwed on is I didn't take into account that mine was only a 1 bedroom, 1 bath with only less than 500 square feet. So when I ran the numbers, and the reason I thought that my property was going to appraise for 60, I didn't take that into account as much as I should have, because other properties that were selling were 800 or 900 square feet. So he took off like $15,000 because mine was 400 square feet less. So you just got to know, just make sure that when you first buy the property, you know what the ARV is, or the after repair value is, and that's probably the best way to do it. And also you can contact a realtor in your market; they'll probably know really well what
Yeah,
what it appraised for.
I was gonna ask, like, yeah, you can't just. I don't think you can rebuild or renovate a home without knowing the potential value of it after, right? You can't go in blindly. There's no way.
So, wait, sorry about that.
That's
The
all
phone
right.
was ringing.
I was gonna say,
Um,
yeah.
wait, sorry, one more time.
I was gonna. There's no way to know as an investor to go in blindly renovating a home without knowing the potential value afterwards, after it's renovated.
Right. Yeah. No. So the, I think hiring a realtor just to run comps, you don't want to take all the realtor's time though. So it's kind of like a process that you got to like tell the realtor you're going to use them to buy the house and actually use them and everything. Because realtors just don't like working for free. So that's a good relationship you need to have with the realtor in order to find a realtor like that. Make sure that you're actually going to use them when you buy the house.
And how important is it to kind of, when you're first starting out, if you're a brand new person in real estate investing, how important is it to find a partner, find a mentor, and establish like networks and connections to get to where you want to be? I feel like if you do this by yourself, I think it's just too much. I think.
That is definitely the most important part in any business, really, is finding the right people that are doing it with you, the right mentors. And so what I did, I guess, before the coronavirus was go to all the RIA meetings. So if I went to meetup.com and I found like 5 different real estate meetups just in this area, and they all talk about real estate investing. They all have a bunch of problems with contractors. We all share the same problems, and it's really motivating because you realize that everyone else is, not that far ahead of you, and everyone's having the same problems as you with lenders or with tenants or with non-payments of rent. So it kind of makes you feel like you're not a terrible businessman. So, because you can kind of just see how they're doing. Obviously, you want to have the best contractors and the best tenants, but it's just kind of cool that everyone just motivates each other and finds deals together too. Because there's a lot of wholesalers there that, say, I have this deal for anyone that wants to make an offer. So that's a good way to do it. And I think that's the best way to network. It might be hard during the coronavirus, but it'll come back soon.
So at this point, you kind of do you have a connections of like your contractors, your connections to buying the real estate properties, the realtors? Do you kind of have a closed loop now that if you need someone, you can easily find them?
Yeah, so I'm actually really close with a lot of wholesalers. So what I was talking about earlier, where they get the property under contract and sell to an investor like me, they send me deals all the time through email, through just on my phone and stuff like that. They text me deals, and if they're a good deal, so I have probably 5 or 10 that just send me deals when they get them under contract. Now, I still don't have I have a good contractors, but it's still sometimes hard to get them to show up. Sometimes they do stuff wrong a lot. Actually, they do stuff wrong a lot. So you just got to make sure you're hiring the right contractors. But I feel like there's a shortage of contractors right now. So it's kind of hard to get low prices and good work at the same time, and people that show up as well. But it's just something I'm still working on. It's just, I feel like no matter what stage of real estate you're on, you're always going to have problems with contractors unless you find like a couple handymen that, always show up on time, you pay them by the hour and everything like that. I think that's the best way to do it. But it's just a problem that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, when I watch your videos, you definitely have your boy Dennis, putting in all that
Yeah.
work, right? He's your go-to guy.
Yeah, so yeah, he's one of my favorite guys, but he's also has a full-time job as a mailman. So he only works for me like on his days off, which is only 2 or 3 times a week. So so I have to get other contractors too. And even Dennis, sometimes he doesn't show up every time, but I still have to call him, make sure he's showing up and stuff like that, make sure he's doing stuff right. So, but I teach him a lot, so he knows how to do it my way and how I kind of want him to do it. So he's definitely, I'm trying to like shape him into, because once he retires from being a mailman, I'm gonna want to hire him full time, keep him busy full time. So
Sure.
other
Yeah.
contractors, different story. Sometimes they just don't show up. A lot of the time they don't show up and everything like that. But you just learn.
Yeah, I think once you establish a team, maybe you can use the same contractors for every project potentially. That'll be maybe a lot more efficient and streamlined. But right now, in your current point with 20 properties that you're managing, do you kind of look for ways to automate it even more or scale your portfolio? What's kind of your ambition if you have one right now?
Yeah, right now really the contractors is hurting my scaling of buying more properties the most, but also having cash on hand in the right times. I'm trying to not buy as much right now just in case market goes down a little bit and I need that cash to buy more properties, or I need that cash in case a bunch of tenants don't pay. So I like having extra reserves in times like these where the coronavirus is
Yeah.
going on and everyone's pretty uncertain about the future of what's going to happen in the future, if they're going to get another stimulus bill, blah 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 blah. So I just like being certain that I'm able to cover all my mortgages in case the tenants don't pay and cover any big repairs. So right now I am still looking for properties, but they have to be a better deal just in case the market goes down a little bit. But if I did want to scale really big, once I kept getting that cash, is best way to do it, I think, is to hire a property manager, kind of just throw it off my plate a little bit, because the rehabs and the tenant turnover is really what you need contractors for, and it can really hurt your cash flow if you leave a property vacant for too long and yet you owe a mortgage on it.
Are you just using your money, or do you have other investors financing the projects that you're
So
working
I
on?
use hard money lenders. Are you familiar with hard money? What hard money
No,
is?
no. What is that?
So hard money lenders is basically people that, and there's companies too, but local people in Richmond that come to those meetups that I was talking about. So what they do, let's say I find a property that I'm buying for 50,000, and once I fix it up for 20,000, it'll be worth 100,000. So I'll put 70 into it, and it'll be worth 100,000. So they'll actually lend you, sometimes more than the purchase price. So they can lend me $50,000 at high interest rate. So it's about 10% interest for a short period of time. So about a year or 6 months sometimes. And so let's say they lend me 70, they give me the purchase price plus the repairs. Then I buy it with their money, and then I use the repairs with their money as well. So now I'm all in for 70. And then once it's fixed up and rented, I go to the bank. The bank will send an appraiser out. Let's say it appraises for 100,000. The bank will then write me a check for 75K, 75% of 100,000. I'll take that 75, pay off the hard money lender $70,000 loan. And so now I have a cash flowing asset with no of my own money into it, and I get $5,000. So that's kind of the trick that I've used. That's why I like to borrow. even though people might say 10%, 10% interest is super high. Why don't you just buy it all cash? I don't like doing that as much just because I have all those reserves now of the cash just in case stuff goes wrong or I need extra money on my rehabs. I don't mind paying 10% to someone for 6 months, which is only, I don't even know what that is. It's probably like $400 a month. That no, probably about $400 a month or something like that, just so I can have more cash on hand in case I find another deal or repair budget goes wrong or all my tenants don't pay.
That's a
You
lot,
know?
like logistics, you know?
Yeah, so yeah, that's not. It might have got confusing a little bit with those numbers, but
Yeah.
I tried to say it.
But how do you manage your day though?
So what I do, so during the day, it depends if I'm doing a rehab or not. If
Okay.
I'm doing a rehab and renovation, I go and check on the property. Usually I like to swing by every day and see the contractors. If I have nothing else to do, I usually work on the property a little bit, maybe do some painting, do some plumbing, stuff like that. I still don't mind doing that. I'll still pop a podcast in and
Hmm.
listen to it while I do some construction, fix it up. But other than that, I'm usually trying to either call my other, if I'm not doing that, I'm either checking the books on the accounting, managing my virtual assistant to make sure, that he's called all the tenants and stuff and all the tenants are good, all the repairs are good. And then also looking for more deals. And that could be through Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and then calling wholesalers. I usually spend some of my day calling wholesalers, just some of my buddies that sell me their houses and stuff like that. But that's basically the bulk of my day. Besides, I mean, that's the business bulk of my day, I guess.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
obviously you have to look for business, but sometimes you said the business sometimes comes to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's just all about your network.
Yeah, and I think once you kind of establish those relationships and produce results, of course people are going to come back to you because they've seen positive results and they of course want to be in your team to potentially make money at the end of the day.
Yeah. If they know you're a good cash buyer, like if you bought, especially if you bought a property from a wholesaler already, you're usually the first one they call when they get another property under contract because they know you're able to close. Because there's a lot of people, a lot of buyers that get under contract and then do an inspection, and then they say, "Oh, I don't want to buy it anymore because the roof is leaking a little bit," and those people just don't get repeat business. The wholesalers, and it's a small community, so people talk about that stuff. They talk about it with each other. If this guy's a bad buyer, a lot of people are going to know, and a lot of
Mhm.
people are, if he's unethical or something like that, a lot of people will figure that out too.
So in terms of being like emotionally intelligent, being not just knowing your stuff in terms of like the paperwork and accounting, but the psychological, like the human behavior, human interaction between you and your contractors, your connections. I feel like that's very important in this line of business. So for anyone starting out, would you say that developing actual human interaction with someone in the communication is one of the most important things to have in your toolbox?
Yeah, so just read How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's all you need to do. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's definitely important. You learn as you go, just how to communicate with the contractors, making sure that the payment schedule is good, that you're not overpaying them up front, and that you're not giving them, and that you're not underpaying them as well. But just making sure they get the job done and job done right before you pay them is another big one. And for the wholesaler side, just making sure you have good communication. If you're buying a property or something like that, make sure you have good communication with the wholesaler. With like call them every couple days, maybe every few days, saying, I'm getting this lender, I'm getting this hard money loan. How's the title company doing? Just so you're both on the same page.
Wait, to provide like context. So how many years have you been doing this so far?
So I bought my first one in 2017. I bought one in 2017. Then I bought 8 in 2018. Then I think another 8 in 2019. And then this year I think I've only bought 5. But I'm moving to a better area. I'm moving to Richmond. I used to buy more in Petersburg, where the houses are like 20 to 40,000. Now I'm buying properties in Richmond that after I fix up the properties, they're worth between 100 and 150,000. So that's why I'm not able to buy as many properties, but I get more appreciation in Petersburg and I get a little better tenants. So that's why I'm starting to move to Richmond.
And every time you get a new property, like how much more do you learn? Like, is that like Like, yeah, how much more do you learn for each during each process?
Yeah, so if I'm renovating the property, I learn every renovation. I'm still learning like crazy, making sure to check the foundation, making sure water lines aren't leaking underneath the house. I had a water line burst underneath a concrete slab house, so we had to run a whole new water line from the meter all the way to the house. And even roots growing in the drain. I have friends that flipped houses that the roots have been growing in the drain, so when they flush the toilet, it doesn't even flush. So they literally have to dig out, get permits and everything, dig out, put a new pipe in, and reseal it with the drain line. Just a bunch of crazy stuff. Make sure an electrical breaker box is good, not fuse box. There's little circle. If it's a fuse box, there's little circles, and that's dangerous. And an inspector will call that out. But what I look for the most now is finding ways to add value, adding a bedroom and adding a bathroom. I think those are the two best ways to increase the value of your property, whether you're selling it or refinancing it. It's the best way to get the best appraisal value, I think.
And does it go for everyone doing this in whatever state? Is that kind of like a universal
I
thing?
think, yeah, I would think anywhere if you can add a bathroom for maybe 4 or 5,000, you'll probably get like maybe $7,000 to $10,000 in value, unless the house is a shithole that's only worth 40,000 fixed up. And sorry, can I
No,
cuss
yeah,
on
yeah,
here?
no,
My
yeah, yeah.
bad.
No,
You
that's
bleep
cool.
that out.
No, you can curse.
But
I don't care.
yeah, if you're in a terrible neighborhood, sometimes it's not worth it to add a bathroom or bedroom. But if the after repair value of the ARV is over 80,000, maybe 100,000, then if you could find a way to add a bedroom or add a bathroom, that's an awesome way to increase the value, because the appraiser is now comparing prices with properties with 3 bedrooms instead of 2 bedrooms, which really increases your appraisal value and the sales price if you're selling it.
Wait, so for the ARV, is there a way that you can calculate it, or do you need someone else outside your realm to, run those numbers and tell you, hey, if you do this, if you do X, Y, and Z, the property is going to be worth X?
Yeah, so if you're wondering how to find the ARV as just a new investor, like you see a house and you want to find what the ARV is, I think the best way to do it is go on Zillow and go to recently sold, and you can literally put like in the last 6 months in a certain radius of a certain address. So you do that. You could also put square footage between this amount of square footage. You can put bedrooms, so only show this amount of bedrooms. And once you do that, you'll kind of get a gist of what houses are selling for within that square footage in those bedrooms. Then you just click on, the yellow sold dot. You click on that on Zillow, and then you look at the pictures to make sure it was a legit house that, was updated and everything. And then if that specific house is updated, then you add that to your, sheet. And then I usually try and find 2 or 3 houses that have been decently updated, that have sold within half a mile. And then I kind of just average those out. And that's how I usually go about finding what the ARV is.
Do you kind of have an Excel sheet to manage all of these calculations?
Yeah, I do actually. So I just made an Excel sheet about a few months ago that, for every square footage less, I deduct a certain amount. For every bedroom less, I deduct like 4,000 to 5,000. And just, I take that. So what I have on there is square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, if it has HVAC or HVAC or not, and the year it was built, and everything else is pretty, but those are the 5 main things that really influence an appraiser, is those 5 things. So that's why I put them on my spreadsheet.
And how long would it usually take for an appraiser to come in, check the property out, and then give you the appraised value?
So when a bank hires an appraiser, the appraiser comes out. It usually takes about a week from when the bank hires the appraiser. Then the appraiser comes out, literally there for usually 5 minutes, takes some pictures and everything. And then, they run their own numbers, and then you get a big old 50-page sheet back from the appraiser, and it's usually within about 5 days, 5 to 7 days.
Okay. And then once you get that value, when do you get the check in your hand?
So then after you get that value, usually you can get it within like a week. You schedule closing after that if the appraisal came in good enough. And are you talking about selling a property or refinancing?
Selling the property.
Okay. So if you're selling a property, it might be a little different. It depends if the seller's financing or the buyer's financing is all good and everything, and the title company already ran all the title work and everything. Usually after the appraisal comes back, if they're already approved and they already have the lender on board, it can usually be like a week or two.
Okay. And when you first got your like your very first check, you know, in your first investment property, like kind of describe that feeling, you know, because you said you were working for 15 bucks an hour at your construction site. Yes, you had your side hustles, but when you had like your fat, juicy check, like your very first one, how like what was that feeling? Like was this real? Like did you pinch
Yeah,
yourself?
it made me just want to keep doing it, keep on going. So that's when I started to just try and do this full time. Is once I got that first check.
You know, I can only imagine. Yeah, I think that's like extra added motivation to just do more and scale and get more properties. Um, of course, with all your experience now, if you were to look back at yourself, like your beginner self, and tell them like a few golden nuggets on like what to do to give them like a heads up, what would you tell yourself, your beginner self?
That's a good question. Huh. That's a great question. So at first, I would say. So what I did at first was I just bought the property outright, and then actually let me think. Man, I don't even know because I've never been asked that before. I guess I would say just to make sure you to get better tenants in your properties, make sure
Mm-hmm.
that you screen the tenants well. Um, Hire earlier than you think you should. So just hiring stuff out and creating systems as soon as you can instead of doing the work yourself. Um, and also just keep learning, keep watching YouTube, keep watching finance videos, keep listening to this podcast. And that's probably what the advice I'd give. But I've never been asked that. So that was a good question.
Anything little by little implementing systems to automate the process like you did with your VA, right?
Right, exactly. And just make sure you create the system so you can hire it out in the future by creating spreadsheets or making videos and stuff like that.
Okay. And just to provide context, you also have, you know, you kind of wrap this whole business around your umbrella of your company. Was it Sandstone Realty, right?
Yep, Sandstone Realty.
So when you, even before starting or before purchasing your first investment property, you have to form your own LLC, right?
Yep.
Okay. And you don't have
So
a,
you don't no you don't have no actually sorry you don't have to do that. If that's what's stopping you from buying a property, don't worry about forming your LLC. You could easily buy your first property in your personal name and transfer it over. I just knew I was going to get into the business, so I kind of made the LLC ahead of time and everything. But as long as you get insurance on the property, having it in your personal name, as long as you only have a few, it's not a big deal at all.
but it is important because say you have a contractor and he or she gets injured and you don't have that, you know, if you don't have that LLC, then of course it's going to be on you now. You're going to get the burden for not having that insurance for the contractor that got hurt on the spot, right?
Yeah, that's also true, but I guess it depends on what insurance you get. I mean, but if you're only, yeah, that's worst case scenario. If contractor or tenant gets hurt and kills himself on the property or something like that, that's worst case scenario. But that doesn't have to happen very often. But yeah, if it does and it's in your personal name, I guess they could sue you for your personal assets. But also, if it's an LLC, sometimes they can do this thing called breaking the corporate veil, where they can still sue you for your personal assets if you don't have the right insurance under that LLC either. So, I mean, I wouldn't worry about it too much if that's what's holding you back. I mean, obviously, if you can start an LLC before closing on your first rental property, I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you have that situation anywhere. You know, you could be living in your own house and your friend comes over and hurts himself and decides to sue you. It's kind of the same exact thing as if you bought a property. I mean, obviously, your friend probably wouldn't do that, but it could still happen.
Yeah. And what resources besides the Bigger Pockets podcast did you listen to or go to improve your skills as a realtor or a real estate investor?
So I still watch YouTube every night. I watch like Graham Stephan. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah.
And like Meet Kevin and all them. I still watch them every night. They keep a good. I just like following the market and stuff like that. But you also got to get really involved in your local market, especially if you're doing real estate. making sure you're going to those meetups and stuff. I mean, they're on Zoom now, so they're super easy for anyone to just join in and go to the meetups and just learn about, the laws in your area. I think that's really important because there's different laws in different states everywhere all over the country.
What I find funny is like in the meetups, of course you're working with other guys, and you said in the beginning, other people are struggling just like you in the beginning. But of course, isn't that your competition as well?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, you could they are technically a competition, but I don't know. People just like helping each other and stuff like that. They're in they're competition in a way that we could be fighting over the same properties, but I don't know. At the end of the day, it's all fun and games. It's not like it doesn't get too serious with anything. It's like same thing with McDonald's and Burger King. I'm sure the CEOs can talk to each other civilly and maybe bounce some ideas off each other. Maybe
There's enough money in the system, then, right? At least in
Richmond,
Virginia, that there's enough money in the system. At least in
Richmond, there's enough
Virginia.
Deals going around where everyone can get a little piece of the pie. I mean, everyone kind of helps each other. Even like other investors call me all the time asking for contractors and stuff like that, and I give them numbers. Or asking for lenders and stuff like that, I give them numbers. Or if they ask me for any deals I have, if I have a deal that I'm wholesaling out, I'll throw them some deals and stuff like that. So either way, if you help someone else, you're gonna get it in return. And even if you don't, you should still try and help as many people as possible.
Yeah, and of course you're building your personal brand. What made you kind of do that? I know that's another like huge task of building a personal brand and making the videos, distributing it across social media. What made you go into like doing that, and how aggressive are you in building a personal brand?
I just listened to Gary Vee. That's the reason. No, I'm just kidding. But the reason why he promotes that a lot, building your personal brand. So I don't know. I just thought I didn't even start like making videos till after like my 10th property, but I thought this is kind of cool. People might enjoy watching this and learning a little bit of flipping houses because I was realizing that I go through a lot of stuff that other people just don't go through at all, like with all the problems with contractors and the houses and everything. So I kind of like documenting it for just also for other people, but also for me. So like in the future, if I have kids, they could watch the videos and stuff, kind of learn a little bit and stuff like that. So that's the reason I kind of went hard on Instagram. And then TikTok, that was just so random. I was just making a video for fun and just ended up blowing up. I think it's because all the haters and all the trolls kept commenting on it, and it just kept pushing up the algorithm.
Yeah, that's always the case. But yeah, you have TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, of course, right?
Yeah. So I put up the same videos on Instagram that I do on YouTube. So I don't really go too hard on. Probably should focus more on, YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. But it's also a lot of energy just to make videos, edit them and everything. So I only do like maybe once a month.
Yeah.
Making the videos and stuff, but I'm trying to do more.
Do you get any indirect sales from your Instagram, for example, from like?
Hey, sorry.
Okay, hear me?
Andres, you broke up a little bit.
Oh yeah, what about now?
What'd you say? I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, like from your personal brand, have you seen any? We're still breaking up, right? Let me know if I think we're good now. Are we?
Yeah, it might be my internet.
Oh man. Hopefully.
Hold on 1 second. Let me check something.
All right. Is that good? You hear me?
Yeah.
So from your personal brand, have you gotten like any indirect sales or a lot of DMs on how to do these business deals, or for any beginner going into real estate, have they hit you up and be like, hey, Dillon, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? I need some advice here.
Yeah, I try and respond to them all. A lot of people main things I've been asked are, how do you get started and stuff like that. And I always, or what's some advice, if you're trying to get started. And the answer to that question would probably be, first off, if you don't have that much money, start out with wholesaling. That way, because you don't need much money to enter into wholesaling. You just need a little bit of knowledge and some hustle. And then another thing would be, if you do have a little bit of money, a thing called house hacking, where You get an FHA loan, which is like a 3% down loan. So if you buy $100,000 house, you could pay $3,000 for it. Or if you buy a duplex for 200,000, you could actually only put down 6,000. You rent out the other side, and that'll pay your mortgage. And if you have a lot of money saved up, then you could just buy rental properties with 20% down, or you could do the BRRRR strategy if you want. But yeah, a lot of people do message me that question, and I always try to respond to all of them, but sometimes I just can't get to all of them. That's the main question people ask me.
For sure. So yeah, Dillon, I don't want to take too much of your time here. I really do appreciate you being here on the show, kind of telling us like the 101 in real estate investing and in your origin story. So if people want to learn more about you, your processes, where can they find you?
You can just follow me on Instagram and feel free to DM me. Sometimes it takes me a while to respond, but I try and respond to all of them. My name is Dillon Dull, DILLONDULL, or you can find me on YouTube as well, or TikTok. They're all under the same ad. The same ad.
So in the show notes, I'll add all those links to the show notes. So if anyone is interested and want to look you up, they can just click on the link and find you.
Okay, cool, man. And I appreciate you having me and everything. And I had a good time. I always love talking real estate, and I love talking business.
Me too, man. Thanks, Dillon. I do appreciate it.
All right, man.